Welcome back. Well, as the country grapples with continued blackouts, Eskom has announced that stage 6 load shedding is now in place indefinitely. The utility says this is due to a number of breakdowns at Medupi power station. It comes days after Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa warned of a cold, dark winter if Eskom's grid remains constrained. For more on this, we're joined by a former executive manager at Eskom, Vally Padayachee, joins us in our studios this morning. Great to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning, Michelle, and a very good morning to your viewers as well. And I'm glad to be back, albeit this very serious subject matter.
Yeah, and actually you were, ordinarily you'd perhaps join us via our video link, but we just never know what's happening with the power grid.
Exactly. In fact, it's for that very reason I came into the studio, because we are on stage 6 load shedding and I didn't want it to be interrupted virtually.
So 66,000 megawatts, that's what we're told is needed over this winter to bridge the gap. Is that right?
I'm not sure where that figure...
From the Electricity Minister.
Well, let's get to the facts, as I understand it, and from my experience. We have an installed capacity of 52,000 megawatts. That's 52,000 gigawatts, right? Installed capacity. If you take out the renewables, that's some 6,000 megawatts, we have what we call in technical terms a dispatchable installed capacity of 46 gigawatts.
Right? Yeah.
As of yesterday, we are on stage 6 load shedding, and from Eskom's media release, if I paraphrase, there's about plus or minus 25 gigawatts out of the grid because of planned outages and forced outages. So that leaves you with about 21 gigawatts that's available, excluding the emergency reserves, right? Your pump storage and your diesel-fired OCGTs. So, from experience, at its worst case in winter, the demand could be around 35 to 37 gigawatts. And I'm just averaging it, okay? So, if you take that into consideration, and if you go by yesterday's availability, then we are looking at a gap, a deficiency of about, let's call it 10 to 15 gigawatts on the grid, maybe at its worst in winter.
What percentage would that be of our energy availability or our energy, the energy that we have, that we're capable of producing, in theory?
As I just alluded to, so if you've got 46 gigawatts of dispatchable capability, because I'm leaving out the renewables because the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't, so that we're leaving that out. So if you take 10 gigawatts out of 46 gigawatts, that's what, you can do the sums of that, right? So it's a significant amount.
Yeah.
We can't beat about the bush in terms of that. So what I'm saying is that technically and professionally, based on the current status of the constrained grid, the unhealthy grid, the power system, there's no guarantee that we may not go beyond stage 6, let alone stage 8.
Sure. That's devastating in a context where stage 6 is already 8 to 12 hours without power in a 24-hour period.
But I keep on saying this even on the media a number of times, that load shedding, albeit with all its challenges and inconveniences and impact on the economy, it's still the best technical management tool to prevent us from going into a blackout. And I think, Michelle, given the current status of the grid, constrained grid, and given what I've just said just now, I think we must prepare not to get into a blackout situation, okay? And I think, and I use another act here, I'm the chairman of the NRS Association Management Committee, and that association, its members are all the metros, Munich, Eskom holdings, South African Bureau of Standards, NESA, and so we've come up with and very quickly, I don't want to go into details, we normally produce standards and specifications for the power industry. And one of the important standards is what we call the NRS 048 Part 9. And not going into the details, it's a standard that, in a nutshell, that regulates load shedding. Mm-hmm. It's actually a NESA-mandated document, edition 2. So that standard assists National Control System Operator and the Munich utilities in mitigating the possibility of going into a blackout situation. So we've done, as an association, in the last many months, the last 6 or 7 months, even longer, we've done extensive work on producing a review of an edition where we are comfortable, and we want to give the South African public some sort of assurance that we've done enough work to mitigate going into a blackout situation where we would assist National Control and System Operator. So I think that's reality. We can't get away from...
You're saying it could be much worse?
Yes, I think...
So stage 6, as bad as it is, as devastating as the impact is on all sectors, but it could be worse.
Yeah, I think, as I say, there's no guarantee that and I don't talk on behalf of Eskom, but just from the information available from their own media releases, etc., there's no guarantee that we wouldn't go beyond stage 6, beyond stage 8. I think that's reality, given the current conditions. But I think importantly, we must not get into a blackout situation. And I think, as I said, by going into, and by Eskom's own admission, even in the media release yesterday, depending on the breakages, because now we've got too many breakages actually, and units are coming back late, they could shift stages at momentary notice. It's by their own. I've got the media release here, the power alert. But I think importantly, and here I talk on behalf of the NRS Association, we must not get into a blackout situation.
Yeah.
And we've done, I think, enough work, enough consultations with different stakeholders to reasonably ensure that.
Vally, just your parting shot this morning on, whether this crisis has been dealt with the kind of urgency that you would think it would be dealt with. I mean, just preparing for this interview with you, going as far back as a couple of years, you were writing several articles warning of, the possibility of higher stages of load shedding, what needed to be done and needed to be done urgently. Have you seen that urgency in our response?
I think, let me respond to say that definitely since the President had come up with his National Electricity Crisis Plan, which was since July last year, the urgency has been there. In fact, I've been...
So 10 years after load shedding started?
Well, I think admittedly, and I go back to my days at Eskom, when Eskom made it clear that we were running short of capacity. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the government of the day came back and said, Eskom, you stay away from new generation, we'll take care of that. And that didn't happen. And then they came back to Eskom, but it was too late. So we were catching up, but not forgetting we had state capture and corruption in between that also exacerbated the decision making. Also, I think we dropped the ball in terms of reasonable, adequate maintenance over the recent years. And there are many other reasons. Also, the human factor. We also dropped the ball in terms of that, in terms of employees. So, but I think since the President had announced that plan in July last year, the sense of urgency has been there. I mean, there's so much of work that's been done in the background, which I think the public is not aware of. that I can safely tell you that
we just want the lights on, right?
Exactly. I think, and that's not a unreasonable demand, a requirement from the public. But I think you said my parting shot. Parting shot is that we must not get into a blackout situation, and if we increase the stages of load shedding, which may be necessary, I think that's a prudent action or response, so that what we call that we soft land the blackout in unlikely event if we get into a blackout situation. So we don't want to get into a situation where we suddenly create panic and then get into a blackout situation. I think by even with this NRS 048 Part 9 standard, we have taken measures to reasonably soft land by going through this load shedding to soft land the eventuality of getting to blackout. But we don't want to get into blackout, and I'm reasonably comfortable that even in this winter situation, we will not get into a blackout situation.
Vally Padayachee is the former executive manager at Eskom, joining us here in studio. Thanks very much for coming in. Unfortunately, not much good news to give you, other than stage 6, as difficult as it is a necessary measure, he says, to prevent a complete blackout. It's just gone 8:32.